Hello, good people. My name is Dr. Neil Klein, and I teach at Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where all the students call me Neil. And I would like it if you would call me Neil also. This is our inaugural YouTube, and it's going to be called, Do You Ever Flip Your Lid? I don't know about you, but I tend to flip my lid more often than I would like to flip my lid. I'm always embarrassed when that happens. I always wish I hadn't done it that way, and I always wonder how I could somehow not get to that place inside of me. That's what this YouTube is going to be. We're going to look at the science behind it to start with, and then look at practically what to do, okay? We're going to start with our human brain and the evolution of our human brain. Back in 1968, when I was an undergraduate student, I read about the Papez-McLean triune brain theory, and it made a lot of sense to me back then. And before this YouTube is done today, we'll talk about it currently and what it's grown into. The triune brain is saying through 1 million years of evolution, our brains have evolved. And if we look at the first part of our brain as humans, it would be called the reptilian part of our brain. Why? Because that's the part of the brain that reptiles have. That's all that reptiles have. They've got a spinal cord and a little bulb on top of the spinal cord, which is their brain stem, and that's it. What does a reptile's brain do? And what does a reptile's brain in us do? It says stay alive. Make sure that we eat enough, we drink enough, we hunt, we don't get killed by other people, we procreate, we breathe, we don't get too hot or too cold and die, but the loud, necessary, constant messages from our reptile brain is making sure that we stay alive. Excellent. Okay? Through evolution, hundreds of thousands of years later, reptiles evolved into mammals. And the second part of our brain, which is much larger than the reptile part of our brain, is the mammal part of our brain. So I think the easiest way to do this is to see what can mammals do that reptiles can't do, or what can a dog or a cat or a horse do that a lizard or a snake or a turtle can't do at all. The big thing, many big things, one of the big things would be movement. Mammals can move in a much more sophisticated way than reptiles can. They can fly, they can jump higher, they can go underground, they can do all sorts of things where reptiles are much more limited in what they can do with movement. Okay? Secondly, sound. The sophistication of mammal sound is immense. What sound does a snake make? What sound does a frog make? What sound does a lizard make? You may come up with one simple answer, but it's not all that sophisticated. And you may not know what the sound is at all. What sound does a dog make? You're all going to make a sound, everyone out there. What sound does a horse make? You're all going to make a sound. What sound does a cat make? You're all going to say meow and make sounds like that. We all know that. So sounds are way, way different and much more sophisticated as well. Another piece is problem solving. Mammals can problem solve in a way that reptiles cannot do at all. You ever go to a circus and see what elephants can learn to do? See what dogs can learn to do? See what monkeys can learn to do? See what other mammals can learn to do? You ever go to a circus and see them trying to train a snake or a lizard or a turtle? Probably not at all. It would be a very unique circus, but you'd have a hard time charging for people to see it, because what could they learn how to do? Okay? So learning how to do stuff is also very important. And probably the most important piece, or two pieces that mammals can do, is mammals take care of their young, which means reptiles will hunt by themselves, and if they're really hungry, they will eat one of their children in egg form still, or as a baby child. Mammals take care of their young. They nurture their young. They can be in families. They can be in groups of many families and work together and hunt together and protect together and problem solve together. That's part of our mammal brain. So I'm going to stop there for a second. Our reptile part of our brain is loudly saying, stay alive. This is what you need to do as an individual to stay alive. And that narrative is always going to be there. The mammal part of our brain, which is always going to be there, is having strong feelings like fear, like love, like hate, like anxiety, like depression, which is basically saying you are a member of yourself and a family and a unit, and there's all sorts of strong feelings there. We may struggle with that as human beings, and as human beings these days, some of us or many of us are living a life where we're trying to get basic physiological needs met. I need food. I need air. I need water. I can't get too hot or too cold. Many humans are living their life that way. Probably none of us need to, given the resources we have. And on a mammal level, we are living in the world of strong, strong feelings. Am I loved enough? Am I competent enough? I've got too much anxiety. I'm really scared. Those are our two parts of our brain. All humans have that. The third part is either the distinctly human part of the brain, which is also called the neo-mammalian part of the brain. And that is probably, I was going to say 20, but maybe 100 or 1,000 times larger than the other two parts of the brain together. It is immense and it is very sophisticated. So what can humans do that mammals can't do, that dogs and cats can't do? Let's look at the amazing amount of things. Movement, once again, much more sophisticated type of movement. We can learn how to swim, how to walk, how to crawl, how to jump, how to use swings, how to fly to some extent with machines, how to stay underwater for 4 minutes by ourselves or for hours with machinery we make. But we can do all sorts of things that way. We can problem solve in ways that other mammals can't problem solve. Medicinal drugs, bombs, wheels, cars, hopefully a way to deal with this current virus going on at the moment, different sets of glasses and clothes and buildings. It's amazing what we can do that way. We can also create different cultures. Okay, dogs on all the continents have similar way of dog behavior and dog communities. There are probably 180 different countries at the moment. Okay, there are probably 4,000 different types of languages that humans speak, which means look at what we can do as humans with sounds. We can come up with 4,000 different types of languages. We all learn one or a few of them. Okay, the sounds that way, the problem solving's that way. We then can create cultures with 4,000 different types of sounds. It's immense what we can do, and it's confusing what we can do. So here's a dilemma. Our human part of the brain, distinctly human part of the brain, which developed last, is quiet. It's softer. It's not screaming at us like, stay alive, like I'm feeling sad or angry or I hate you. It's softer. It's also very confusing sometimes because there are so many options. What we probably need to do to create the world that we would all like to be living in is two things. The first thing is we need to nurse and listen to our neo-mammal brain as often and make it as loud as are the screaming reptile and mammals part of our brain. We need to do that. Then we need to realize with the human brain speaking, what makes sense to us? What makes us happy? What makes us less scared? What makes sense to us? We've got to begin to listen to our human part of the brain with those concepts in mind. That is going to also be very, very important. We do this externally all the time. If there are 3 people speaking to us outside of our bodies, we would easily go, okay, who's talking? And which one of these people do I believe the most because I trust them? And which of these people do I doubt the most? Internally, we've got 3 narratives. We can't omit the human part of the brain, or we're going to be creating the type of civilizations and cultures that we seem to be living in today. We've got to listen to our distinctly human part of the brain, make it louder, and jointly come up with which ones make the most sense and feels best for human beings on the planet. Can we do that? Of course we can do that. Has that been done before with cultures? Yes, it has. So I want to now, a book that I wrote recently called Me, Myself, and Mindfulness is about a child named Nicholas who's 11 and trying to make sense of what's going on in his world. And the beginning part of the book says Nicholas tells stories, and the stories are about a boy with 3 brains, which we're looking at today, who lives in 2 dimensions and who likes to say 1/2 promise and 1/2 prayer. We're not going to get to those today, but I do want to say a little bit from the chapter on the boy with the 3 brains. The most amazing thing, according to Nicholas, is that he hears each of these three brains talking to him all day long. Like when another student cuts in line, his mammal brain screams, "Ugh, I don't like it, what's happening here?" His reptile brain isn't certain whether to fight or be quiet. His humor brain believes that a simple conversation with the right words could be effective. When Nicholas sees a classmate that he thinks is cute, the reptile brain gets activated. Nicholas experiences himself blushing, and his heart is beating quicker. The mammal brain falls in love very quickly. The humor brain says, "Hey, let's go say hi." At other times, the mammal brain is afraid of this cute classmate, and the humor brain doesn't want to talk to this classmate at all. Or when he thinks a teacher is being unfair, his mammal brain says, "Unfair." His reptile brain wants to fight. His humor brain comes up with many possibilities for what to do. Nicholas wonders where we're not taught about these three narratives in school or anywhere or everywhere, and he thinks children from 6 years old until my age or older all ought to be talking about our three brains and which brain are we listening to and which brain do we want to be listening to and how that's important. One student at Leslie was working with was nannying, and one of her students who she had spoken to about the three brains came home one afternoon with a story, and I think the student was 8 or 9 years old, not the student at Leslie, but the person she was nannying with, and he came home all excited and said, "I know what you mean now, I tried it in class." He said, "I was in class and I raised my hand and I asked the teacher if I can go to the nurse because I wasn't feeling well, and the teacher said no." The reptile part of the brain wanted to fight because didn't expect the teacher to say that. The mammal part of the brain was really upset and angry. The human part of the brain raised his hand again and asked if he can get a drink of water, and the teacher said yes. And the reason he did it was because his leg was hurting and he thought walking would be a good thing and having water would be a good thing. So this 8-year-old was able to bring in his human part of the brain and problem solve a situation. Don't we all have to learn how to do that? Wouldn't that serve us all well? Wouldn't that serve our children really, really well? So, next piece is, there's a book called Mindfulness by Daniel J. Siegel, MD. He wrote this book is amazing. It's written, it's technical, but you can understand it really well. He talks about him interacting with his children, and he flipped his lid. He also uses this little hand map, and he says that if this is one's spinal cord, thank you, Brad. I keep losing that word. If this is one's spinal cord, this would be the brainstem, which is stay alive, stay alive. This would be the mammal part of the brain, feelings, feelings, feelings. The human part of the brain, when the lid gets flipped, a distinct part of the human brain has disconnected. So all that's there to respond is the mammal and reptile part of the brain. And we wonder why we flip our lid. Our lid has been flipped. If our lid is there, we get a sense of going, okay, what do I want to say? I think that most of us do that too often. Can we learn what to do when we flip our lid and what not to say? Or what to do, how to use our words afterwards? You bet. Can we learn sometimes how to not flip the lid and say what we want to say and be proud of that? You bet. So once again, the two books are Me, Myself, and Mindfulness by No Way Press, which is written for youngsters and families, and Mindsight by Daniel Siegel, which is a brilliant way of looking at the triune brain and what it's developed into today and how people are using it. Just want to say one more time, as I always do, what we do with psychology at Leslie University here in Cambridge, Massachusetts is amazing. Please check us out, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Be well.